Hey there, so I thought I would jump on the ChatGPT bandwagon. And I have said in my single video that I would be back, and this is me delivering on that promise in a rather timely fashion. So, what I did was that I had a short story that I started developing 5 years ago, and which I could not really bring to fruition because it was, nonsensical maybe, or I guess pointless would be a much better term. So I thought that maybe I would check and see if maybe AI or whatever is purporting to be AI, if it can finish this story or give it any sense. I've given it a lot of parameters and I have made it rewrite it a couple times. So here's the outcome. Benedict sat alone at a small wooden table in the corner of the cafe. He pondered the purpose of his existence as he took in the warm, earthy colors and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. The cafe was busy, but Benedict hardly noticed the bustle around him. He was far too focused on the thoughts running through his mind. Why am I here? What is the point of this meeting? Will seeing Holly again change anything, or will it just leave me with more questions? He glanced at his watch for the 100th time. She was running late. He drummed his fingers on the table, the knots in his stomach growing tighter with each passing minute. What if she doesn't show up? What if she's changed? What if she doesn't feel the same way about me? Then he saw her. She walked through the door, her hair auburn and styled in sleek bob. The sight of her took his breath away. He stood up to greet her, and they shared a hug. They sat down and talked. Holly explained her current life, her job, her family, and her kids. Benedict listened and talked, but he couldn't help feeling that something was off. He couldn't help but feel that Holly was not the same woman he had once loved. As the conversation continued, Benedict could sense that Holly was not receptive to any romantic advances. He couldn't shake off the feeling of disappointment, and he knew that Holly had moved on and he should too. As Holly got up to leave, Benedict felt a wave of bitterness wash over him. He had been foolish to think that their meeting would lead to anything. He watched her walk out the door, feeling maddeningly pointless. Benedict finished his coffee and left the cafe, his mind in a whirl. He grappled with the futility of it all as he walked through the busy street. The earthy colors of the cafe and the wooden architecture and the buildings seemed to mock him with their familiarity. He couldn't help but wonder if he would ever be able to find purpose in his life. So that's it. It's rather short, even for a short story. I guess this would just be like a one-pager. I don't know if ChatGPT has any sort of limitations in length. And I asked the chatbot to write a few other stories as well. But what I did was I prompted it to apply literary critical analysis. So that's what it did. Certainly, I can apply a critical literary analysis to the last version of the story about Benedict and Holly Snow. Firstly, the story highlights the theme of unrequited love, as Benedict is still deeply in love with Holly despite her having moved on with her life. This is also seen through Benedict's internal dialogue as he expresses his uncertainty about Holly's feelings for him. Additionally, the story also deals with themes of nostalgia, as Benedict's longing for the past is juxtaposed with Holly's contentment in the present, as seen through their conversation and Holly's explanation about her current life, job, family, and kids. Furthermore, the story also touches on the theme of disappointment, as Benedict's expectations for the meeting are not met, and he is left feeling disappointed and bitter. In terms of style, the story employs a melancholic and introspective tone. The use of internal dialogue allows the reader to gain insight into Benedict's thoughts and feelings, creating a sense of intimacy and emotional connection with the character. The imagery of neutral and earthy colors and the presence of wood also contribute to the melancholic atmosphere. In terms of the characters, we can see that Howard is a complex character that is struggling with his own emotions and regrets. Now, Howard was the protagonist of another story that I made it right. He is, in a sense, a relatable figure for many of us, as we all go through moments of disappointment and unrequited love in life. On the other hand, Holly is portrayed as a more flat character without much exploration in her motivations and feelings. Now, if this story was not a one-pager, this might be different. I was trying to write a longer story, but it would just always default back to this length. So, finally, the ending of the story leaves a sense of ambiguity, as the reader is not sure whether Howard, or Benedict, will ever find the closure he seeks, or if he will remain stuck in a state of disappointment. This open-ended conclusion encourages the reader to think more deeply about the themes and the emotions presented in the story. Overall, the story presents a poignant and introspective look at unrequited love, nostalgia, and disappointment, skillfully conveyed through a melancholic atmosphere, internal dialogue, and the use of imagery. Well, good on you, ChatGPT. I hope that any writer can be as contented with their work as you are with yours. Now, my thoughts in a nutshell, I would think that it's a real nice little story. It's short and sweet, but when it came to the analysis, it was just spewing back some of the prompts that I gave it, and it graded itself, well, rather favorably. So that's interesting. But as regards the story, I would say that any rewriting that I commissioned ChatGPT with always tried to make it more subtle, and I asked it expressly to make it more subtle, and I think it's very much on the nose. I think that there's some beauty in the story, but really not a human beauty, so it's not subtle. It doesn't have its own creative engine, I don't think, like a human would. Now, it's ingenious as it is, and I think it's a great story, and I don't think that any sixth grader could write a better story. It's just that it's really a regurgitation of prompts, and fairly obviously there's no soul to the whole thing, and I think that while it is incredibly successful at capturing certain human emotions, it's still not a showstopper. But as far as its utility goes, I think that there's something there. But I do think that creativity it's really, really, really difficult to manufacture and automate. And I would guess that it's much more easy to make it write an essay, especially if you just give it the appropriate prompts that would just, tell the outcomes, because if it's fed the correct literature, correct sources, then it doesn't seem to struggle with linguistics and structure, so it would be able to quickly set up a fairly sensible essay on any topic, I would guess. But essay writing, especially when done by students, is really just a practice in futility. So I think that an essayist would be fairly unimpressed with its outcomes. But as far as true and tried sort of topics, it shouldn't struggle. So it's very, very interesting. And the analysis, I think it's real difficult to see how much of its points were just regurgitations of my prompts and how much were genuine pieces of analysis. But that was fine. I think it was very favorable toward itself. So that's like a little bit, but it can be useful. But yeah, it's interesting, but not a creativity machine. So that's it. And heed my words. I will be back.